Welcome to selfdiscoveryradio.com, where the orchard of wisdom is just ready for picking. We celebrate your why, the journey that you've taken that inspires someone else. We support your services, we support your story. Come and be our guest, become a host, be an author with us. Come and see what we've got. Our next show is... Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of Your Health is Your Choice. I'm your host, Sara Troy, and my guest today is Deb Morgan. I had her here last year where we talked about fibromyalgia. You know, that disease that's still a big question mark for a lot of people. It's not just one thing, it's a multiple things under an umbrella. In fact, it's 31 things under the umbrella of the title of fibromyalgia. It's still very confusing for doctors and very, very confusing of how we treat it. Is it a disease? It is now. Is it something you can only manage? Can you be cured from it? There's so many levels to that, and we talked in depth about that. So I invite you to go back and listen to that show where we did talk about fibromyalgia and how it changes our lives, but what we can do to empower ourselves. But today is a different story. Today is about opioids. Yeah, we're seeing a crisis about that right now, aren't we? Where is this coming about? What is this pandemic about? So often we hear somebody has had an accident or an illness and they're given opioids for the pain. And it seems to be such an addictive drug that they need more and more and more of it. And you're saying, yeah, but what about the junkie that's on the street with the opioids? You'll probably find they either got it from mum or dad's cabinet, or it's just another one of those things that they seek out because it takes away the pain. But physical pain is something that sometimes we need to really help with drugs in order to get control of it, to take the edge off. And then we have to learn how to manage that pain in other ways. So, you know, these drugs aren't, we're not talking anti-drugs here. Everything has its use. But why are we putting a drug out there that it has such an addiction? I've done another show on this where the guy from the opioids became an opioid pusher. You know, gun under his pillow, police chasing him, all of that. And until he kind of came to a screeching stop and goes, what the hell? How did I become this? And this is the thing. It starts off in one way. So let's find out Deb's journey of how she started off on the opioid journey that led her down a different path. Welcome to the show, Deb.
Thank you. How are you?
I'm doing great. And you?
Yeah, doing good.
Good now. And that's the
Yes,
point.
very good now and not so good 24 years ago. Yeah.
And of course, 24 years ago, we're still looking at drugs just being the answer to everything, right? Holistic
Right.
medicine alternative was just woo-woo and only for people who are out there.
Yeah.
Nobody understood the value of it. The drug was all. So
Mm.
to be giving you opioids was nothing. You know, just go and take
Oh
them.
no, they would hand them out like candy.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's what you do with that. Like when I got addicted, it was because of a surgery, early hysterectomy. Then I decided, well, I still need to be on pills. So I went in and they did a laparoscopy. So I'm still on pills, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And when those pills run out, then you do what everybody does now, which is, or did now, which is doctor shop. And
Mm-hmm.
so you go to doctor's offices and you've got this or you've got that. Or I went to dentists and would get things done to my teeth that I did not need
Right.
just to get opioids.
Right.
So pretty soon, I did something back then. It probably wasn't very well known back then. I mean, actually, and you hear about it now, and I'm like, oh my God, I hope I didn't start a trend. You know, it was just
Mm-hmm.
horrible. But I started taking the prescription pads. At that point in time, you could take a prescription pad out of a doctor's office and that you could write it. I mean, if you had the guts to do that, I suppose,
Right.
or if
Yes.
you were desperate enough, which was me. So, you know, I would grab the pads out of a doctor's office. Unfortunately, addicts are not stupid.
No. No. Mm-hmm.
Anything, yeah, if there's anything that a family member or anybody out there who's dealing with it or whatever, we are not stupid, but we can lie
Mm-hmm.
like the quickest breeze of a wind,
Mm-hmm.
you know, to get ourselves out of something. So I took prescription pads. I began writing them in every name possible and passing them in. We have different counties in Colorado like we do in Oregon, but we didn't in Arizona. I didn't do it there. But in Colorado, I must have passed them in, I don't know, maybe 6, 7 counties because they're all right around each other. And so once I started doing that, I could get by with that. And I wrote Percocet, which they didn't check. They never called the doctor.
Mm-hmm.
They never did anything. And there was no watermark on the back, of these or anything. And at the time, I was a mother. Like I was a soccer type mom, the Girl Scouts, the Boy Scouts, the whole thing. I did everything with my kids. I had a good job. I went to work every day. I took, and I still went through 100 Percocet a week by the time that I would get finally help, but I would get caught to do it.
Now, can you tell me, because I'm not very good with painkillers, I have an adverse reaction. I might be fine initially, and then it completely works oppositely with me, or I overreact. If you give me something that's a sleeping pill too high, I'm bombed, gone, finished.
Right.
But how did it make you feel that you nearly, needed to have to go back to it? And then how the hell did you function on so much of that? Because you're in a permanent state of alternative beingness.
Yeah, you are. And when I self-medicated, I didn't know anything about what was going to happen down the road.
Right.
As far as why was I didn't even ever think about why I was doing it.
Mm-hmm.
There was no ever, but when I started taking them, I didn't have, like at the very beginning, you feel some sort of euphoria or high or whatever it is, and you chase that.
Mm-hmm.
I've got to say that from the time I started drinking at 12 till the time I started doing this, you chase that first high. You never get it again, but you chase it.
Yeah.
And so then what happens is that your body begins to get used to it.
Right.
Now, This is why you hear about people dying. Whitney Houston,
mm-hmm.
and Nicole Smith, all the, stars that have died that we hear so much about, where we don't hear it about regular people. You start to take more. And then your tolerance gets higher.
Mm-hmm.
So you start to take more. And, people who are alcoholics, true alcoholics, people who are actually going to drink themselves to death. I've known several, and my grandfather was one.
Mm-hmm.
He never had to hide it. But a lot of them will hide bottles everywhere.
Right.
There'll be bottles under the sink. There'll be
mm-hmm.
bottles in the everywhere, in the closet, in the garage, And I did the same thing with pills.
Mm-hmm.
Getting that many pills a week was a second job. And I didn't realize it, how much pressure I must have been under to just keep that amount going and have extra, bottles of pills so that I could make sure and always have a backup.
Right.
You never wanted to run out. That was the one thing you never wanted to do.
So it became a fear. In other words, you actually became a slave to the drug.
Yes. Oh, yeah. My life was, I mean, like I said, I could be the normal. I had to be the normal mom, the normal worker. I had to be the normal wife so my husband would never see it. Mm-hmm. My second husband was very controlling. And so, there was no room for error.
Right. There. Yes.
And he wasn't quite, he wasn't intelligent enough, I hate to say, to be able to notice there was something wrong with me.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes it's not caring.
No.
As long as it doesn't interfere with their life and food on the table and everything else, it's like, I don't care how she does it as long as I get what I need from her.
Yeah. And his thing was beer.
Right.
Or
exactly.
whatever. Mm-hmm. And, we'd still drink on the weekends, and I'd still take Percocet when I drank, just not as many. Now, that one was really something to me later. I thought, what was I thinking? I could have died.
Oh, exactly. And then, of course, then there's the getting behind the wheel of a car because you, in your own irrational mind, you felt, I'm perfectly all
I
right.
felt normal.
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
Right.
that
And you don't
became my,
realize you are impaired because this has become your new norm, hasn't it?
yes, it is
You
my
are
new
just purely
normal.
the drug at this point, so you wouldn't know what to gauge as normal anymore.
No, and it's something that it's hard to explain. And if you're going through it, the denial, oh my
Yes.
God, the denial is, I can't even explain how bad it is until you start to take a look at it
Mm-hmm.
from an aspect that you don't want to go to.
Yeah.
I mean, in my case, I had a childhood that if my mother and grandmother would have thrown me across a 4-lane highway, that would have been the only thing they could have done worse than what they did.
Mm-hmm.
And so, when you're in a position where you're a stolen child, basically from one person to the other, and you
Yeah.
live in this constant fear of drama,
Yeah.
you grow up with horrible,
Trauma. You're traumatized. Yeah.
horrible trauma,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't know that either,
No.
because of
And the
course that,
post-traumatic stress, the trauma,
right,
all of that, because this has become, you look for any way to survive, any way to,
right.
empower yourself. And of course, when you step into the drugs or the alcohol, it's a false illusion that you are in control,
Yeah, that you're
because
normal,
and because you really are numbing the pain.
right. So
Yeah.
after I mean, I went over a year, well over a year, probably closer to 2 doing this. And I think what happens with people is you start to make mistakes.
Yeah.
Everybody starts to make mistakes. And you don't know you're making mistakes,
Right.
but you start to. And it's almost like a reaction,
Mm-hmm.
to the fact that your body is trying to tell you something, maybe,
Yes.
like you're going to die, really,
Mm-hmm.
without being standing in front of you, a total version of you looking at you going, you're going to die. You don't realize that. But I think you start making the tiniest of mistakes. And one day I passed a prescription at a Kmart pharmacy, and not anywhere by where I lived, but close to where I worked. And what they did was instead of calling the cops and making a big deal about it there, which actually was the right way to handle that, they got my license off my car
Ah.
when I pulled out. And at that point, then that started the ball rolling
Mm-hmm.
for what would eventually be a knock at my door. But until I looked back at these papers, I didn't realize how many actual investigations were going on around this one incident that could have put me in prison until now,
Mm-hmm.
um, maybe longer. And so I never thought anything of it. I kept doing it, never thought anything of it. And I remember this so vividly. You never forget some of
No.
this stuff. It just never goes away. And it's a good thing. It's a
Mm-hmm.
good,
It's a good reminder. Yeah.
as long as you remember, you can, halfway deal with it. So I went to like a school field trip with my daughter, which I didn't get the chance to do very often because I worked. And we came home, and that evening, knock, knock on the door. No big deal, but who is it? You know what I mean? Like, who's knocking on our door at 8 o'clock at night?
Mm-hmm.
And opened the door, and it was officers. And at that moment, I knew
Yeah.
immediately why they were there. And the first thing that came into my head was, how in the heck am I going to lie myself out of this one?
Yeah.
Not how am I going to get help?
Right.
That
Yeah.
wasn't the first thing I thought
No.
of.
No.
So they wanted me to come down, and they served me with papers to come down and do a writing sample and talk to the sergeant. And at that point, I had to tell my husband what he was standing right there. I mean, I couldn't hide.
No.
There was nowhere to go. Kids were in bed, so it didn't affect them directly at that point. it would affect them later, but in a positive way.
Mm.
I guess if I wouldn't have handled it the way I did, possibly not. And I think parents try to hide too much sometimes
Yes.
when they should be age appropriately telling them as you go along.
Yeah.
Don't go down this road.
Right.
You know where it goes.
Yeah.
And so I went down there and he gave me a writing test and he basically came back and said, I know this is you. And I said, I know it's me too. I was just done.
Yeah.
At that point, I was just done. I knew I had an attorney already before the next day when I went down there. He wasn't with me, but he was an excellent attorney. And I mean, I could have fought it. No, they would have found out so many more that it would have been horrible. And I was so afraid they were going to anyway. And at that point, I thought, well, it's just this one.
Yeah.
If I can get help or do something, I've got to do something.
Yeah.
And my mother was a deputy sheriff, my grandmother who raised me. So, of course, I knew about laws and what to do, what not to do, constantly. But I told him, he looked at me and he goes, I know that if I check other counties, I'm going to find you in those. And he said, so I don't want to do that. And I thought, I mean, you don't want to do it? What are you talking about?
Yes.
This could be a barn burner for you. Yeah. This could be the best thing that ever happened to your career. And he said, I want you to do, if you will do this, he said, I will make sure that you are not arrested on a warrant and you won't go to jail. And I thought, that one person that you don't ever expect to be the person that will help you is the person that you have no idea who they are, and rank and file, they're so far ahead of you. And I think what he wanted was he saw me, and of course I didn't look like, your normal, I mean, whatever normal
dealer
is.
on the street, dealing with kids and or taking advantage of other people. You were just simply an addict.
Yeah. I mean, literally, I would steal things from stores, take them back at the store. Once I stole it, it got to that point because I couldn't get money from my husband. So it was like, it was this huge, you couldn't unravel this ball if you tried to, And so I told him I would go. And so he gave me a couple of examples of places I could go. I had insurance at that time that would pay for it, which is unusual back then because I guess there wasn't that many people, in 1980 or 92, I guess, that were doing that. And so I checked into one that had to do with the hospital that I'd been in with my kids. And I went there the following day. And when I got there, it was such a nice place. I mean, you walked in, it was gorgeous. Like the foyer part, it was gorgeous. The whole campus looked so nice. Well, dumb, I'm just an idiot at this point, and I think I'm going to get out of this. Well, before I even went into that place, the first, you can ask almost probably 90% of addicts, maybe more. The last thing you do before you go to rehab is whatever your drug of choice is.
Right. That one last fix.
Yeah, right? You do. Yeah. And you do more than you would normally do so that you can get through just that one part. So they took me through. Everything was gorgeous. They went through my bag, made sure I didn't have anything alcoholic. And I mean literally. If there was alcohol in your toothpaste, you weren't using it. Right. If there was alcohol, like mouthwash, you couldn't use it. You couldn't have anything that was alcohol. You could have cigarettes, thank God, because I smoked. But, that was it. They weren't going to take every single thing away. They left cigarettes. But other than that, I mean, it was going to be a boot camp.
Yes.
And I didn't know it. So I walked down with this guy behind him and I looked around and I thought, well, this doesn't look too bad. I can get through this and then I can go back out and then I can do what I was doing before. And
Right.
I'm like, after all this, why did I think that?
Yeah.
So I walked in the door and all I can remember is it was almost like being in a jail cell. The door was so heavy. When it hit behind me, it sounded just like,
Clunk. Yeah.
pool doors. Yeah, that bang.
Mm-hmm.
And on one side of it, I heard people screaming.
Ooh.
And on the other side, I didn't hear anything. So I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't sure if I was going to the morgue or if I was going to the other side and that was going to be me. And so they took me in, they took my picture, they did everything. They
Mm-hmm.
had paperwork and, just every possible thing that they could ask you or whatever. I mean, weight, height, everything. And then all about what you did. And the whole thing.
Mm-hmm. It
And
was
now I
exposure
understand.
time.
Yeah.
Right.
And you don't tell them the whole thing.
No.
You only tell them what you want them to know at
Yeah.
that point. They put you in a room in a bunk with a couple people. But I think what really starts to happen and when you really start to change is start going to meetings every day. I mean, there's meetings all day long. Every single one's different. You get time to smoke. You have to ask if you want something to drink. There's no caffeine. You eat at a certain time. Everybody eats together. You eat lunch. You eat breakfast. You eat dinner. The whole thing is all regimented
Mm-hmm.
as if you were in
Jail.
the army, basically.
Right.
So we got into meetings and I didn't realize what that was going to be. But what happened was they started asking everyone in the room to go around and tell, basically who they were and what they did. And because there was like me and a couple other people that were new. And so they said somebody had their arms crossed. And they said nobody has arms crossed in this meeting. It's bad body language and it tells you that there's things that people don't want to give up.
Right.
So people don't want to talk about things when they start to fold their arms.
Mm-hmm.
And my arms, of course, were folded and probably, I'm surprised I could breathe.
Right.
Um, but they went around and I was listening to some of the stories and, um, there was people that were anesthesiologists that would siphon fentanyl off of patients. There was, people who've done everything
Right.
from alcohol to heroin and everything in between. People who were nurses, people who were, in the medical
Yes.
field. It's
It's very.
not
It's a
unusual.
very high abuse in the medical field, actually.
That's right. It
Mm-hmm.
is. It's even now
Yeah.
when they put so many safety measures in place and
Mm-hmm.
still is. And so they came to me. I knew it was coming.
Mm-hmm.
And they asked me, to explain what I did and everything. And they said, unfold your arms. No folded arms in here. I mean, they were pretty
Mm-hmm.
strict about it. And I said, and I didn't. And they kind of started getting mad because I wasn't listening. And so the counselor yelled at me and said, unfold your arms. And I remember looking at him and going, I can't. And he said, what do you mean you can't? And he said, you can and you will. And I said, I can't because my guts will fall out.
Mm-hmm.
Everything. And he said, I understand that. I hear that a lot. But he said, you'll never get better if you don't start doing what we tell you to do in here because it's really going to make a difference. And that was the first day that I actually started what would become a real recovery.
Right.
Was when my body language got better, when I learned that when they ask you a question about how you felt and I had no feelings.
Yes.
And I'd say, I'm mad. And they'd say, mad's not a feeling.
Mm-hmm.
I had to learn every feeling
Yeah.
that you normally would have instead of saying, I'm ticked off, I'm mad, I'm this, I'm that. The English language all over again because I couldn't think of any.
Right.
I I couldn't think of anything. And so I learned, how to establish a feeling pattern.
Yeah.
And those people became the people that I trusted. Those
Yes.
counselors, the people who got me off the drug, they took me off the right way. They took me off slowly. They
Yes.
understood what they were doing. They took me off of and put me on another drug and didn't take me off the same drug I was on. They did everything.
Yeah.
And I still went through withdrawals. Percocet has to be the second worst to heroin, is what they say,
Mhm.
as far as withdrawals. So no matter what happens,
You're
you
going to go
take
through
that
it.
last, yeah, you take
Yeah.
that last pill and you don't have any idea what's coming.
Right.
And
Right.
it wasn't good. I mean, it wasn't fun. And it didn't take me as long, but they would not let me stay in the room and withdraw. I had to get up and do every single thing that everybody else did during that
Mhm.
time. But it was important. I
Mhm.
look back now and think how important that was to not let me, you know,
Wallow
uh,
in the suffering, you know,
yeah, don't
because
let me feel sorry
yeah,
for
yeah,
myself, and don't do it, all the things that they were trying to teach me not to do.
right. Yeah.
So I definitely started to appreciate those people. And you have to learn to trust again, and they do exercises for that. And then they found out that I had an eating disorder, which I did. I would, not eat for 4 days, and then eat one day, and then overeat one day, and then not,
Mm.
and was put in the hospital for not eating. This whole thing, before it ever became about the
Yes.
drugs,
Yeah.
was about something else.
Mhm.
And so they brought a doctor in to talk to me about mental problems that I might be having. I think they spotted them probably more than I would have.
Mhm.
And they told me that I was bipolar. I didn't know what bipolar was.
Right.
And it took me a while to figure it out, actually.
Mhm.
And so they put me on Prozac.
Mhm.
Well, that helped, but it masked it. You know,
Yes. Yes.
they would switch me eventually to lithium. And when I got put on lithium, it was a whole different ball game at that point. It helped a lot,
Mhm.
and it was it was life changing. It
Mhm.
was like somebody washed a window, and you
Mhm.
could finally see out of it. And I quit taking the drugs. I went to counseling at the counseling, at the rehab place at night, 2 days a week for 2 years. The judge only said I had to go a year. I did random UAs for 2 years. I didn't have to do them that long.
Right.
But at that point in time, that was all I had. Because
Right.
as soon as I got home, I wasn't the same person anymore.
Right.
I wasn't I wasn't who I was when my husband was married. So
Right.
it lasted 3 months. He beat me up and tried to steal my son.
Oh.
We had a son and a daughter, but only a son by him. And the bench warrant did go out, but it was an accident. And they actually apologized to me for that, which said, "You don't owe me apologies. You know, I should be here." And I got bailed out, but I should have still had to go through that.
Mhm.
And at that time, I had called 911 on him for domestic violence. And when the cops that were supposed to get me were sitting down the street on one side, and here from the other side of the street come the cops that are going to get him. And he didn't know it. He had no idea and that they were even there. So they come getting him, and these cops come to get me. And my kids are standing across the street watching
Both
this.
parents. Yeah.
Both parents go
Mhm.
different direction.
Mhm.
And then they got split up that night because one went with my grandma and one went with his.
Mm.
So it was hideous.
Yeah.
That last piece was bad. I mean, would never be the last piece, but I kept going to counseling
Yeah.
because it was going to be a battle,
Yeah.
and I knew it. And so after you're newly recovered, and then you're going to go through this battle with child custody
Yeah.
and just being newly,
Yes.
I mean, it just went on, seemed like forever. And I never used. In fact, I got mad. because the magistrate said he didn't think I'd make it. And I said, watch me.
Mhm.
And that was the end of it.
Right.
Don't, don't
Yeah.
make,
Don't challenge you.
don't challenge
Yeah.
me. No.
Hmm.
So, it just, but it brings home what's going on now,
Yes.
because I know, and I know what these people are going through.
Hmm.
I know where they're headed. There's only two ways to go.
Yeah.
I started going to AA. I started doing the steps. I started getting the coins after 24 hours of being sober. That I still have it.
Hmm.
I still have all my coins from that first year that meant so much.
Yeah.
And when I spoke the first year, my son was only 4 or 5, and I had taken my kids with me to AA because there was a daycare. So they got to play with all the other kids whose parents were also in AA.
Hmm.
And, we played softball. I mean, there was a lot of things that we did. And I got up and talked because that's what you did on your anniversary. And at the very end, I said, my son wants to say something. I brought my kids up so they could see him
Hmm.
because they were part of that whole
Right.
process.
Yeah.
And my son said, he tugs on my dress and says, I want to say something, Mommy. And I said, okay. So I lifted him up to the microphone and he said, hi, my name is Scott. I'm an alcoholic. And I thought, out of the mouths of babes,
Yeah.
I mean, so I thought maybe, so my kids had learned something.
Hmm.
They had learned that you can be sick and you
Hmm.
can get better. And as much as they could understand
Yeah.
it, my daughter was older, but 3 years older, but my son was younger. And as they grew up, I did not hide it.
Right.
I told them what I did from the time I was 12 when I started drinking to the cocaine,
Hmm.
everything but heroin. I never did needles. I was afraid of them.
Right.
That's the only reason I
But
didn't
as
do
you
it.
said, I mean, the opioids were just as strong, so
Yeah,
and so easy to pop a pill, isn't it?
exactly.
Needles and things are all fussy, messy, but you can pop a pill and get the same feeling. So,
That's
yeah,
right. And when they called me a junkie
yeah.
in rehab, I thought I'd die.
Hmm.
I thought I'm not a junkie. I mean that. What do you mean I'm a junkie? I'd never been called a junkie. What do you mean I'm a junkie? Um, I walked out of there with a different feeling about being a junkie
Hmm. Yeah.
because I was. I
And the
was.
thing is, for today, I just don't know. I mean, Jada Pinkett Smith has this red round table where they have very honest talk, between her mother, her daughter, and the guests they bring on. And Jada, in a show the other day, admitted that she, because of the area that she was brought up in, very poor, very drug infested, that she was out there selling drugs on the street as a kid because that was the path, right? But she had the drive and the tenacity that she wanted more. She was going to go after more. This wasn't going to be her life. And, she fought for that. And I think it's until we find something that means more to us than the escape, something to fight for, then that I think then becomes that driving force for you to want to be well or change directions in life. But we have to get to a point where we bottom out, right, where the
Oh
carpet's
yeah.
being pulled underneath us, we're flat on our ass, and it's like you have a choice to make: stay in hell, right, and keep paying the devil for the fire, or rise up and go through it. And going through it isn't going to be easy, but that is the discovery of your strength, the discovery of your courage, the discovery of how many abilities you have, how many skills you've learned from it, what you can do with it once you've risen up and stepped into your own authentic self. And then you actually discover, my journey can serve someone else. My journey can help someone else, either going through it or prevent them from going through it. And whether it is drugs or whether it is addiction to anything else, because addiction is addiction. You have food addiction, you have sex addiction, you have power addiction. We've become a very addictive society in this world because we haven't got that ability to love ourselves from the inside out. If
That's
it's not
right.
taught as a child, if we're not in that environment that is loving and caring, we're constantly seeking for it elsewhere. And then there's this illusion that you're going to find it in the bottle, you're going to find it in a pill, you're going to find it at the bottom of the plate, you're going to find it with that new lover. And you're not. You can't find anything external. It has to be an internal job. And I think the reason why the rug gets pulled out from people is that this is an invitation to go in, unravel yourself, peel away the layers, let go of what is not serving you, step into your own beautiful, authentic self. You are more than you're giving yourself credit for. But you can't do that unless you're willing to take the journey. And you know, I had a young woman that actually went to school with my daughter, and it was very brave of her to come on and do a show on her addiction. And for her, she was a functioning addictor. She worked, and people just didn't see it. But she ended up on the street, and she said she was just got to that level of about to sell her body. And then it was like, no, I'm not going there. That was her bottom. She went to rehab, and she said when she's gone to rehab, the first thing she does when she comes out is go look for a fix. Her mom picked her up, and she said, take me to a rehabilitation center now. I don't want to go back on that. But she had to be ready. She had to have bottomed out. She had to have got to that point where it was enough. And that's the thing with anybody in any form of addictive nature, isn't it? They have to get to that point where I'm not doing this anymore.
Well,
and I'm now ready to receive.
There's only two ways to go. When you get to the bottom, you either climb out of it or you die.
Yeah.
And that's just, I hate to say it, but that's it. That's really what you are facing.
Yes.
If you continue to do what you're doing, or if I would have continued to do what I was doing, I would have left my kids motherless.
Yes.
Would have had to go through the trauma or worse that I did.
Oh, God forbid you be in a car one day or high.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the thing is that there is no such thing as a functioning addict. That's you're functioning at your job, but not at full capacity. You're deluding yourself. You know, it's like the person you're lying to is you. It's always you.
And it took me till I'm 56 now, oh God. But it took me until I was 54. A lot of couches, a lot of therapists, a lot of AA, a lot of everything. And I pulled a lot together. I mean, that's how much there was. But when my husband had a heart problem, I realized that there was still a pack.
A new husband, right? Not the same one.
The one I've got now.
Yes. Right.
Yeah. Which I met in AA.
Right.
Kind of one of those romantic stories. Yeah. You hear someone's voice, you look up, you know. And you're not. I mean, they say two addicts don't mix, but you know what? They can.
Yeah, because you understand what support you need to give to each other. Yeah.
Right. When I say I was in a blackout driving a car and I ended up passed out, and I could go on, which I will in the book, but I mean, when you tell them that, they understand it.
Yeah.
Because they've been there.
Yeah.
When you get a DUI, blah, the whole thing. And this is just many, many years ago when I was 18. I mean, you wait till you're 30 and then you're, doing something that you have to do to protect your job.
Yeah.
But, it's so sad, and it makes me feel like I need to say something.
Yes.
And people ask me, well, how can you talk about that? Because you were arrested and you've got a record. My records got sealed because I did everything and more. And the judge said, we can seal them.
Right. And that's the thing. I think one thing we have to understand is that if you have a drug pusher out there, they're not just kind of selling something to get their own fix, but somebody who is pushing the drugs out there, taking advantage of people that are vulnerable, then throw the book at them, please, because they are enabling an addict and they're just doing it for profit. They don't give a damn about anyone else. It's, it's the green stuff. But when you've got somebody that is an addict, it is always some form of pain they're covering up. It is always in place of a coping skill. And we've realized more and more that people who are doing any form of addiction, it is unravel their past, look at their childhood, because somebody who's living in a fruitful life doesn't go and take drugs or become an alcoholic because they're in the joy of life. How can you be in the joy of life if all you've known is trauma or pain, or you've never been taught how to feel? You know, there was that wonderful movie, The Inside Out, which
Yeah.
is, you know, I mean, that is a wonderful kids movie about feelings, but I think it became such a relevant movie to adults who had suppressed the feelings, who didn't know what joy was, only knew what anger and pain was and resentment was, didn't know how to have the other feelings, never had been taught how to have these
Mm.
other feelings. It was always about suppression, suppression, suppression.
Survival.
Right. How can you, step into joy and love and laughter if you're constantly in survival mode and fearful? And we see so much of this in America right now, the hate brigade, you know, and that all that hate rhetoric that's going out there about differences and religion
History.
being different, race being different, this being different, that is coming from people, some of them ignorant, yes, but mostly it's coming from people who are living in fear. And when you're living in fear, you're going to lash out. So I think we're actually seeing a lot of the hate rhetoric out there becoming a new addiction.
Yeah. No, I've never seen anything like that.
Right, right.
And well, I guess I can't say I never have
Hmm.
because I've seen it,
Hmm.
but it's been in a different form,
Yes,
a
and not
completely
on such a
different
mass
form.
scale, in peacetime, right? In wartime,
Exactly.
yes, but this is supposedly meant to be peacetime.
Right.
Um, I think, as with everything in life, isn't it? When you bottom out and you've got to face your demons, you've got to work through it. There's no avoiding it, going around under it, paying someone else off to do it for you. You can't do
Right.
that. This is your life. You've got to go through the pain to get through the other side to actually understand what life's really about. And the joy and the love and all the benefits you can have from it. But you have to be willing to work through it. And it's going to be as hard or as difficult as your participation. If you really immerse yourself into it and you really do want to get better, you'll get through it quicker. If you're going to fight and resist it all the time, you're going to make it harder for yourself. So that comes down to your choice. You decided, this is
Well,
enough. I'm going to work
right.
through this.
And when you're doing all that and you're finally at the point where you're, able to say, I'm doing well,
Yes.
I'm doing better, or give yourself any kind
Hmm.
of kudos.
Yes.
Sometimes then again, like the divorce, they'll pull the rug out from under you and you're fighting again.
Yeah.
But this fight is the good fight.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's a fight for something that means something,
Yeah.
not a fight against all the things that were suppressed for so long
Yeah.
or not taught.
Hmm.
Or when I learned how to actually love myself,
Hmm.
um, I thought, because all my life I thought that's a stuck up vain idea. That's how you were
Right.
taught. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Who do you think you are, placing value upon yourself, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was we raised
Yeah.
Baptist,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
How bad can it get, right?
Yes.
Um, but I mean, they teach, it's also ingrained that have, you shouldn't have any feelings for
Yeah.
yourself at all.
Yeah.
Whether it's love, whether it's
Mm.
like, whether they call it vanity,
Yeah.
they call it everything. So when
It's
I grew
duty.
up,
You've got to be
yeah,
a dutiful person. And, I always say when you step into self-love, you actually are stepping into service. Because in that self-love and that abundant love, you are now helping other people. You have become a service. But when you're living in duty, you are a servant. You're
that's
in servitude. It is everything about what you can do for the people who want something from you. And that is not service at all. That is slavery.
yeah, and it feels like it.
Yeah.
I mean, once you're out of it,
Yes.
you know,
You understand. Hmm.
I know. I mean, it's like racism, really.
Yes.
If you take a look at it, it's not as bad. It's not the same.
Hmm.
But for an instance, I have bipolar disorder, and they pick on the mentally ill,
Hmm.
whether you're doing well or whether you're not.
Right.
So you begin to feel, a little bit scared of what's going to happen, especially here,
Yes.
with all the craziness. And you know, you you kind of feel like you're sort of you kind of start to feel like I kind of could in a very small way, you know, understand what it's like to be put in a category. You
Mm,
know, when you didn't ask to be put in
right.
that category and you're doing everything right,
Yes.
that you can.
Yeah. I
And
don't belong in a box.
no,
It's like we discussed in our last fibromyalgia show. We have fibromyalgia. We are not
not
fibromyalgia.
fibromyalgia.
It is the challenge that we live with. We live with daily, and we are constantly balancing. It does define how much we can do and can't do, and we have to
Right.
live within those parameters. But it's not the label I walk around with. I am
No,
Sara, and Sara is this person. These are just happens to be the things that I have to carry with me, and that has happened through physical trauma through my life that has ended up being that way. And I think this is the thing, bipolar or any of the other things that we see, depression, anxiety. We so love to label people. It is an understanding of what our issue is and our
yeah,
challenges are, but it is not again a definition of
it's
what we
not
are.
a label.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And then that, it was starting to go away. You
yeah.
know, I was in the workforce. It was just starting to go away a little, that stigma
Hmm.
about having bipolar disorder and the stigma about, being gay. These things were being accepted,
Yes,
you know. And now it's almost like
gone
I never
backwards.
used the civil rights movement. I'm not
Yes,
quite old enough. But, um, but I can imagine it's just like everything just going back
I know.
all those years, and how are we ever going to unravel it? But then I think, I thought that when it was like a mirror broken in my
Hmm.
life, like
Hmm.
somebody just took my life,
They
threw it
shattered
on
it.
the
Hmm.
floor, and it broke into a million pieces. And I had to figure out which pieces I was going to keep
Yeah,
and which I were going to throw away.
yeah,
And luckily, I did that. And
right.
why? I think the only thing that helped me in my life with all the struggling and all the suppression and all the abuse was the strength that I came out of that with. And some people don't. Some
No.
people come out and they end up dying. And it's
Mm.
sad. It's so sad.
For some people, it's their life story. They just have never risen up to the challenge. And what people say, well, what's life all about? Well, it is to rise up to whatever challenge is given to you. It is for us in self-discovery of our strength, of our courage, a discovery of what we're here for. What's our purpose? What's our contribution? And, here, 98% of the people that we interview here in Self-Discovery Radio are people that have had a journey, one thing or the other. The old cosmic 2x4, the rug pulled from underneath them, or even just a kiss on the brow of redirect, depending. But it's all about stepping into the why you are here because of who you are, your musical instrument, becoming the I am, so you can be a part of the we are. And we can't be a part of the we are if we don't know who I am.
Right.
Right? Because it's your I am that you're bringing to the table. It's your I am that you're bringing to the orchestra. If you come in and your chords are all off, your strings are all off, you're going to, shatter the music. We have
Right.
to step into ourselves. We have to become what we're here for. And through that strength and tenacity and placing value on ourselves and discovering just how awesome we really are when we allow ourselves to be, now we realize actually what humanity can really be. I think this is where we're really looking at humanity right now. We're looking at the worst scum in the world, the 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 dregs of the lowest sewage you can think of in the world, right? And then you're looking at how beautiful and extraordinary and exemplary and how illuminating we can be. It
Oh
all
yeah.
goes down to what's the choice? Which side do you want to be on? And are you willing to work to be over on this side
Right. And without pay.
without pay?
You don't, I mean, we don't give ourselves enough time in the
No.
United States, where every other country does, many other countries do.
Yes.
And we don't give ourselves any time, and there's no time afforded us.
Hmm.
So you're constantly in that work mode. You're
Yeah.
constantly in the mode where you can't think of anything. And when I got fibro, um, they put me on Vicodin. And, you know, at the time I thought, oh, you know, so I told my doctor, this is what I went through. You know, I didn't tell him about the being arrested part. I thought
Right.
I was on that. But I said, this is what I've been through. And if we ever take me off of this, then we need to take me off slow.
Mm-hmm.
I know exactly what we need to do, and I'm fine with that. So I left, and I thought, am I going to be fine with that? It scared me to death. I
Yeah.
didn't know how I was going to react. But, you know, I reacted fine. And 3.5 years ago, I got off.
Yeah.
I chose to get off. I got
Yeah.
off on my own. No doctor helped me.
Mm-hmm.
But I knew what to do
Mm-hmm.
and where to go for help.
Right.
You know, I went to my acupuncturist. I got herbs. I did everything, but I did not fall back.
Right.
And I think that what you're saying has a lot to do with that, because yes, it's a disease of the soul.
Mm-hmm.
That is what addiction is.
Yes.
And if you can get through the disease of the soul, some people are able to control.
Yeah.
Some people never will be, because they leave parts out as they go, because they're too painful.
Yes. And, you know, it's too painful. Then, of course, there is the thing of shame and blame, and then a lack of forgiveness. And the thing is, it's really, and it really doesn't matter if nobody else forgives you. The only person that needs to forgive you is yourself.
Right.
And because there are some people out there that are incapable of forgiveness because they're still living in their own trauma, their own pain. And your forgiveness of self, of doing this to yourself, is that at the time I knew no better. I know better now.
That's
so
right.
I have no excuse now. I know what other avenues I can go to that can help me when I need to. I know how to place value upon myself, the importance of myself. And when you step into that, then you're going to look for those alternatives. You're going to look for that support. And it's not a question of somebody else's opinion. That doesn't matter anymore. The opinion is of yourself. What are you choosing to do? You're going to go down that rabbit hole again? Do you remember how bad that was?
This time I wouldn't make it.
Yeah, exactly.
This time I would not make it.
Right, exactly. You know, the other thing, though, is that, as you said, other things are going to get thrown at us along the way. And you go, oh, God, you know, can I cope with this? Haven't you given me enough? And then it's like, well, you're only going to give me what you know that I can carry. So clearly I'm strong enough to carry this. All right, let's roll up our sleeves. What are we going to do about this one, right? Get to work. Because you suddenly realize, look where I've come from.
Well, yeah, I mean, it can be a joy. Actually, it's funny. But at the end of the day, mine was, I had offered him half of everything in the divorce. It's a really good example. It was a horrible, horrible divorce. He wanted extra, you know, I mean, there was just 2 custody evaluations. She's a drug addict, that. And, you know, at the end of the day, I got sole custody of my son as a recovering drug addict who had done everything and more that she was supposed to. And that judge looked at him and said, my friend, you have narcissism issues underlying, and she is trying her best to help herself. And I thought,
wow.
But when I tell my story, I never, ever, ever leave out the part where just because I'm telling you this story does not excuse what I did, because it just does not.
It explains why you did it.
Yeah,
right. But it's not an excuse for what you did, right?
No.
Yeah.
I do not excuse anymore. I do not make, you know, I try never to say, and I try never to say I try. I will try, because usually I will try means I won't.
Right.
You know, I learned that years ago when I was in rehab. So all those tools, they don't leave you if you accept them. They just help you.
Yeah, it's like, remember Yoda in Star Wars? Do not try, just do.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And the thing is, when you do, it doesn't have to be at full volume. Even if you've just gone up 1 notch, you're doing. right? You're
Yeah.
doing, and then the next step becomes easier, and the next step becomes easier. The I'll try means I don't really want to attempt it. I'm not sure. Is there an excuse I can put in its place? But if you say I'm willing to, and you start taking that one foot in front of the other, all of a sudden you look back and go, look how far I've walked. Look how
Yeah.
far I've come. If I can do that, I can take bigger steps. I'm feeling more confident. I'm feeling more assured of myself. And I
Right.
can take those bigger steps. It's that don't sell yourself short, right? Don't
No,
sell yourself short.
don't ever sell yourself short.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when I'm hoping, I hope with all hope that my message will touch someone out
Mm-hmm.
there who either has someone in their family who's going through even a meth addiction. There's no drug addiction that is not basically the same idea. You can't help them though if they
Until they're
won't
willing.
get help.
Yes.
You have to be able to
Yeah.
accept that.
Yeah.
And a lot of people have a hard time accepting, and I don't blame them. I mean, my stepson, my nephew, they've gone through it, and they know that they can come talk to me,
Yes.
but they won't because they're not ready.
Right.
They
Yeah.
weren't ready for help.
Yeah.
Um,
And they
and
may
when
get, and they may seek help elsewhere, which is okay. Suppose
yeah,
when they're
that's
ready for
fine.
help, go and find it from someone.
Just
Um,
get it.
Yeah. I mean, it's very often, of course, but when an addict is going through, the last people they want to be around is family, because there's still that shame feeling.
Oh yeah.
And it's only, I think, when they've got to a certain level that they can come in and stand and speak about it. But they need to get to a certain level first. And again, as you said, they have to be ready.
And
Um,
sometimes they don't get ready.
no, no. And,
People
and
are,
there are just some people that are addicted to addiction. If it's
well,
not
yeah,
one thing, it'll be another.
the first step says there are some people who are inconstitutionally incapable
Yeah,
of becoming
yeah,
sober.
yeah.
If they knew that back in 1930 or 40, when they came out with AA to help the alcoholics
Hmm.
that were just basic alcoholics that they knew what they could try and help them with.
Right.
When they came out with that, I think they knew way more. They're like the forefathers,
Yes.
they were able to see in the future and
Right.
know that this isn't going to get any better.
No.
This is only going to get
And
worse.
the thing is what we are looking at today is such a disconnect in families, such a disconnect in community. It used to be the communities were tighter and people would look out for each other.
You knew
You
your
know,
neighbors.
you knew
Yeah.
your neighbors, the village raising the child. Your kids could go out and play in the street with the other neighbors, and all the neighbors would be out the window looking out for the kids. And now it's like you can't let your kid play in the yard because you're scared it's going to be kidnapped, or who is that kid? You don't know where they come from, and we're living in paranoia. We're living in fear, and all it's done is isolated us. And then in that isolation and in that fear, it starts eating up at us. And then it brings up old memories, or it brings up this, it brings up that. And then what do? You self-medicate. And really what we need to do is, as a parent, sit down with other parents and say, I'm struggling. Anybody else struggling? How can we help each other? Where
Right.
is the shame in that? Why have we been put on that we need to be perfect? Ask for help,
That's right.
please. Because
No
that's what
kidding.
community is about. Ask for help. My kid is having some stress problems at school or being bullied. How do I cope with it? I don't want to offend anyone. So therefore, I'm not going to do this. No. It's ask for
No.
help. Speak out about it, because if you don't, it's going to ferment. It's going to develop problems. And then you're going to look at that issue down the road. And your ex being a narcissistic. I have a fabulous show on narcissism. I do invite people to listen to it. It's a 3-part series. It talks about narcissistic, sociopath, psychopath, and then also narcissistic parenting. And then the third show is actually where we break down all the narcissistic labels, because some people maybe only one or two labels, some people are the whole
Yeah.
labels, right? Different degrees of
Right.
it. But it's also understanding that is a child that was never taught empathy, never taught caring, never taught how to love anyone else. They're still in that kid survival mode, me, myself, and I at anybody else's
Or they're
expense.
taught that. They
And
can
of
be
course,
taught
you
that,
just
which
have
is
to look at
cool.
who's in the White House to know narcissistic at the highest level. And,
Yeah.
this is what we're talking about. And being aware, as you grow up, that love, care, and attention, and teaching your kids to care about something else is so very important. And we've got to understand, if we're living in a trauma, if we're living in an inner drama, and we're hiding it by trying to be the perfect parent, our kids pick it up. They know there's something going on in there. And it's also making them hide things from you because they don't know how to express themselves. By you being honest with your kids and taking them on this journey, you've given them the gift of being able to talk about it, not be ashamed about it, that there isn't anything that you can't get through when you're willing to do it together.
No. My kids would always call me when they needed a ride home, whatever. And my kids were, I don't know. I don't know how I ended up with kids like that, But I look around today, and when we moved into a small town in Oregon, basically out in the country, I noticed that there were still kids riding their bike and riding their skateboard and playing basketball and doing all those things.
Yes.
Now, it's not that they don't have electronics, but there is a underlying problem with electronics because they do have so many ways. And my grandson, who's 5, has had an iPad since he was 2 and has known how to use that. And I told my daughter, get him off time.
Yes.
Give him 15 minutes, here and there. I don't, because he was starting
Don't let it become the babysitter.
No, because he was starting to act out.
Yeah.
Because, you cannot even keep those kids from
stimulated. They get overstimulated and they don't know how to have time out, time to be with themselves, time in silence, time in peace. There's time in exploring or reading.
Creativity.
Yeah, exactly, because everything has become on this because it's so easy. And, we have to understand they have to be interactive with life. And this apparatus is it's a great communication. You're walking around with a computer all the time, but we've got to remember it does not replace human interaction.
And people have computer addictions,
And
and
especially the millennials.
They don't know they do, but I see people all the time walking down the street on their phone. They're not looking where they're going.
No. And have you seen the new monkey thing, the third monkey? See no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil. And now they've got text no evil,
Yeah, no kidding.
And it's that I've done many shows on cyberbullying because it's such a coward's way and so easy for them to blast and be nasty or take a video of someone, and no accountability because you're behind the screen. But I'm sorry, every single thing you do in life, behind or in front or in person, is something you have to be accountable for. There is no escape. You will pay the piper somewhere down the road.
Yeah.
Right?
There's always a price.
Yeah, always a price. So, my darling, when does your book come out? What is its title? How do people find it?
I am on now. I was so happy. I finally got DebSpot across the whole, web. So if you go to debspot.com or DebSpot, you'll see me on Facebook. You'll see my blog. You'll see, I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Alignable. I'm on all of the things that are up and coming.
Yes.
That's one way. Easy. I'm easy to find. And I'm doing my blog again, which is much easier to navigate now. It's going to have health on it. It's going to have fibro on it, mental illness, and drug abuse. So those are going to be in different categories. So say you don't want to read something, on that. But on the front is the name, which is Trapped. And everything in my life was a trap that I had to figure out how to get out of.
Yes.
It was a perfect name for my book. And so I'm going to try and get it out by the end of the year. And I'll either go indie or have an opportunity to go with a publisher that actually old-fashioned publishes books.
Yes.
So I was like thrilled with that. But and I think it's going to be my life, and I'm going to have to not make it into a J.R.R. Martin novel. But it's going to tell what happens to people when they're abused.
Yeah.
What can happen to trigger what they do in the future, which triggers again what they do later, and again what they might do later. And it kind of just gives this whole laid out story. And when people do hear the whole story, they're like, I can't give my worst, party story anymore.
Right.
yours, yours beat mine. Sorry, can't do it.
And of course, some people just have addiction that they go through, right? But,
Right.
you've given the fibromyalgia, which is said is a disease that is not curable, it's manageable, that's it. And
Yeah.
you've got the bipolar, and, you've been through all of that. And it's like, well, how much more are you going to give her? you know?
And then abuse. And
And
the
then
abuse
abuse,
is not good.
not only abuse as a child, but in marriages, but look where you are now.
Yeah.
And look how strong you are now, and look what you're doing for other people now. And this is the thing that is a reminder to people. We are our story to a point of that our story is there to help other people go through theirs. But
Right.
we are not the result of our story anymore because we've written our own,
Right.
right? We've
And what you're
changed the
doing is
dialogue, we've
trying
changed the
to,
verbiage,
yeah, and
right?
you try and help other people really.
Yes, yes.
Um, and I mean, anybody can find me. I've made it easy,
Mm-hmm,
and I would like to make a group page off of my page.
mm-hmm.
There's a lot of things that I want to do, and I have to do it one at a time, which I hate because patience is the worst thing that I've ever been, which I could never, ever say before 1993,
Mm-hmm,
But yeah, patience was my nemesis. That's the thing I was not given. I was
mm-hmm.
not given patience. So of course I load my plate up and,
Right.
and
So
then
it's
I have to,
pacing yourself one step at a time, and
yeah,
learning how to dance, from one thing to another of whatever comes up at the time, right?
that's right.
That's and I think
So,
it's like I know that I had to learn patience because when you have people with an answer, I want everybody to know it. Everybody, like, here it is. But again, people say to me, why aren't you a 15-minute station? I said, because you cannot impart such wonderful knowledge in 15 minutes. I hear it in telling the story of exactly what you went through, how you came through it, what you're doing for society now. In that strength and that courage, that self-dignity, that self-love. How can that be done in 15 minutes? So my shows are for the people that are ready to hear, because
mhm.
they're ready to pick your wisdom from your tree of wisdom, in the orchard of wisdom, and they're ready to apply it. So I'm not there for the people looking for a quick fix. These
Yeah,
shows are for people who are truly wanting to learn, how can I help myself? How can I help others? How can I even just understand the situation? Because we've got to stop the blame, we've got to stop the shame, and we've got to stop pointing fingers. Even our
exactly.
own parents, the way they brought us up in their understanding, in their own pain. So we can't even place blame on there. We don't like what they did to us, but
No,
at the
but
same
you
time,
can't.
they're just doing what they understood was, right? There
No,
wasn't the malice there. There was just simply us, all they knew. So we learn to forgive and we learn to empower ourselves so we can move forward doing what we need to do, which is inspiring others to take their own journey.
that's right. And it's a journey, and
Yes.
it's actually the best journey I've been on. I've been married now for 21 years to the same man,
Mm,
and he's amazing.
mm,
And it's one of those things where it's kind of like that Cinderella story. You
yes.
start in the corner sweeping up the
Yes.
dirt, and
Yes.
you end up being the princess.
Right.
I I that's what I feel like
Mm,
sometimes. But what I always say, the one thing I say, and it'll be probably the beginning line of the book,
mm,
is children are born with a white canvas.
mm-hmm,
There's been no wrong done to them, and they've done no wrong to anyone else.
mm-hmm.
It's the only time in their lives when they're actually going to come out with nothing there. It's the color that's thrown onto that canvas by other people throughout their lives that makes the picture of who you are.
Right.
So, do you want your canvas to be all black
Mm-hmm,
and red and all the colors that aren't good?
mm-hmm.
Or do you just want a portion of that to be there, and maybe later it's yellow and bright, and
Mm,
and I always think about that because
yeah.
that's really what happens.
Yeah. And it's also teaching kids that no matter what their canvas was painted, that they can take the brush and paint their own canvas.
Exactly.
And that's the thing, is that you may have been victimized, but it's your choice if you wish to stay the victim.
That's right.
That really is your choice. because who hasn't been victimized one way or the other at some level? And the thing is, are you going to use that as an excuse? Are you going to stay there? Or are you going to say no more, and I'm going to do whatever I need to do to paint my own canvas, to write my own book, to be in charge of my own choices? Where there you need to go with the flow of the universe that will lead you on its way, but to step out of the fear, to step out of that control, to step out of what has been done to you and look upon it as something that has strengthened you, that's enabled you, that's giving you that platform to place
Well,
value on your own life.
I waited all these years to write this.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, all of these years. So I'm now an older writer coming
Mm-hmm.
out. But the reason I did was because how can I write intelligently about something I haven't done?
Mm-hmm.
Once you have 24 years in and you haven't, gone back out,
Yeah.
um, I think that's enough time to be
Yeah.
able to say that
Yes.
you know something about
Yeah.
addiction,
Yeah.
because I don't forget
Right.
anything.
You're proof it works. You're proof that you can survive it. Right? You're proof that you can
You
change
work
your life
it.
around. You're proof that you can find love again. You're proof that you can survive anything that's been thrown at you.
That's
Right?
right. And
And
it's
yeah.
if you work if you it works if you work it.
Yeah.
And the old way of AA was the best way. A lot of people are scared of AA now because they put too much religion in the way that they've done it. I've read the
Mm-hmm.
new 10. If you go to the old 12 step,
Mm-hmm.
it's the program that I went with, and there is no religious connotation in
Right.
there.
And nor should there be. Nor should
No,
there
the
be.
doorknob
It
should
shouldn't
be
be in politics. It shouldn't be in anything else. Religion, like sexual preference, is a preference. You choose
right.
your own
Yeah,
faith and
there's
the own way
no,
to worship, and it
no,
shouldn't be in anything else that is a public domain, because then it isolates and segregates people.
it does.
Mm-hmm.
And that way, you can have a doorknob that's your higher power if that's
Yeah.
what you want. No one cares.
Yes.
No one
Because it's
judges
yeah.
you for that.
Yeah.
They start getting into religion and adding in the AA, and then then again, we're going to end up with a mess.
Well, seeing it in your politics, right? Some stupid statements about, you know,
I
children
know.
being held
Yeah,
in cages
I'm,
because God wanted it. Well, hey, baby, talk about
yeah.
misinterpretation.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, did he come down here? Because really, I missed him. I
Yeah.
mean, it wasn't like the Dalai Lama when he came here.
Yeah. Well, as they say, Jesus will rise again, and I agree, but not in person, but within us.
That's
When
right.
we step into our godly presence, which means switching on that godly consciousness of kindness and love and caring towards one another, that is the presence and the conscious of God. And when we step into that, it's not about what that faith or umbrella is, the title is. It's
That's
about
right.
your presence, your resonance of kindness, caring, love. And when you step into that, there is no place for hate. There is no
No,
place for fear. There is no place of that. In that state of love, all you're going to do is empower, care for, and show kindness. And that's the elevation that we need to see more of. So, yeah. Well, my darling, so it is debspot.com.
correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
and across your social medias, debspot.com or Facebook
Yeah.
Deadspot and all of that. Great. And
Yeah.
then obviously will you be doing a pre-sign up of the book when you get there?
Yeah, depending on how they do it, how I do it, there
Right.
will be. I would like people to sign up with their
Right.
emails on the website. I don't use information for anything else.
Right.
I'm very safe. But basically, because once the book comes out, I'm going to be giving some free copies out,
Mm-hmm.
and I want to make sure,
It goes to
that
the people that really need it. Yeah.
it goes
Yeah.
to the people that that have been with me
Yeah.
and stuck by me.
Yes. Yes.
And there are people who will, and there are some people who do.
Yeah.
I just don't know they're there because a lot of times people don't want to make a comment, and I understand that.
Mm-hmm.
So as long as they're getting there, I don't care.
And they've got to remember, if they email you, it's private. If they go through Messenger on
Okay.
Facebook, it's private. Nobody else is seeing that. And
No.
you can have a dialogue with you. They can ask you questions. They can come out to you. You know, it's okay if you're not ready to do it publicly, but you want to tell someone. Somebody here right in front of you, been there, done that, look where she is today. So
Right.
this is the person to speak to. There will be no judgment, but you have to also remember this: stepping into it and saying, I'm wishing to step out of that lifestyle. I'm wishing to take the path. You have to remember this. You have to take that accountability of your action, and you have to own it. This is your choice. There's no backing down. There's no
No.
blaming someone else. If you want a better life, own it, be it, step into it.
Right. Well, I think it's, I mean, I'm excited about it.
Mhm.
But the one thing I can say about writing a book on yourself, on your life, especially when there's trauma involved,
Yeah,
is you have to go back. And it's taken me a long time because
yeah.
I've had to go back and really live through that all
Hmm.
over again to a point. But I haven't fallen apart. I haven't,
Exactly.
and so I looked at that and I thought, I have come
Right.
a long
Yeah.
way.
When you can look back at what's happened to you without any pain attached to it, without any blame or
Or
upset
hate.
attached to it or hate, and you just see it for what it was. This happened to you. You've learned from it. You've become more than it. That's when you really know you've detached from it. You have moved on. And so, but sometimes we do have to go through it in order to let it go. And then when we do, we just realize it doesn't have that effect on me anymore. So I can talk about it. People say, how can people who have gone through trauma be talking about it? It's because they've reached that level where they're talking about something that's happened to them, but they're not attached to that anymore.
They're not living it
Right. They're not
anymore.
living it. They're not repeating it. It is just something they've managed to internally let go, and they're speaking about it because now it is somebody else's story they're trying to invite out to help them tell their
Right.
story to release their pain. So, yeah.
That's right.
Well, thank you for doing it. Thank you. I can't wait for
Sure.
your book to come out, and for stepping up
Right.
and willing to tell that story, because as you said, so many in the past would be so judgmental, and it's if you knew how many people out there are hiding, and they're high officials or the celebrities, they're your doctor, they're hiding so well behind this. And if if we were more open about it, more people would be open about the fact that they need help. So let's leave judgment, persecution, and blame away, and let's step into that kindness, love, and caring, and say, how can I help?
And you have to be willing to take the judgment that's going to come your way, which I'm fine with that. I
Hmm.
mean, not everybody's going to agree. Not everybody's going to,
Right.
ever feel the same way. But I lived it. This is how I got through it. And maybe it's not the right way for you to get through it, but I don't care if
Yes.
people go a completely different path. They're going to, it's their journey.
Hmm.
But I just want to make sure that they know that you can come out of it
Yeah.
and you can be okay and have a good life. You
Yeah.
can have a
It's not
good,
about the how necessarily. It's about your why. And your
right,
why is because you need to step into your own life, your own meaningful purpose, because that's your service to humanity.
right.
Stepping into that love. And when you do, then you get it. Then you understand, okay, now I know what I'm here for.
That's right.
Right. Well, thanks so much, Deb. Been great to have you back on again. As I said, please go back and listen to her fibromyalgia story, where she
Oh,
shares
I
about
will.
how she, lives with that, what she does, the challenges, and being a fibromyalgia person myself,
Oh,
it
I
is,
know.
it is, juggling. But
That's for sure.
again, it's like we're not going to let it get in our way. It may
No,
slow us down, or it may do this or that, but like everything else in life, you find another way to do
that's
what
right.
you need to do, right? So,
Right.
yeah.
That's exactly right.
Okay. Thank you so much for being with us here, love. And to everyone
Yeah.
else out there, remember, you too can come clean. The only way you're going to get clean is to step up and say, I can't do this anymore. I won't do this anymore. I need the help. And the
Yeah.
first step is being able to say that. And even if you don't know which help to go to right now, say it. Say it, Because when you ask for that help, I promise you, they always say the teacher will appear when the student is ready. So,
And I'm here if anybody
exactly.
just wants to say it to somebody that they don't know.
Right.
You
Yes.
know, sometimes
Yes.
that's safer.
Yeah.
So,
And the encouragement and the belief in someone, sometimes that's all they need, right?
yeah,
So
sure.
thanks a lot, love.
Okay.
Bye
Thank
for
you.
now. Until next time, folks. And
Yeah. Yeah.
until next time, when the book comes out, we'll do more and see the response
That's
on
right.
it.
We'll do the bipolar piece next
Yeah,
time.
exactly. And so, folks, and also remember to share this, because you don't know who is going through this. Even if you suspect somebody might be having some issues in life or even facing a trauma, share the show. Have a conversation about it. Listen to it with friends. You will find at the end of that show, there'll be somebody there who's willing to open up. And
Yeah.
there's no judgment there. That has to be
No.
left out the door. It's
No.
openness, because everybody goes and does something to hide the pain. And when we're willing to talk about the pain, then we step into courage. And that's when we need to support one another.
That's right. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
My pleasure, darling. My pleasure.
Okay.
So until next time, folks, be kind to yourself. Bye for now. For more wonderful shows like this, please go to selfdiscoveryradio.com, podcasts, and see our lineup. And if you wish to support us, we have a funded button. Please stay tuned for our next show.